My name is Nancy Rapando. I work with WWF as the Africa Food Systems Leader. My work at WWF is actually to bring together issues of agricultural production and conservation, showing the benefits, the opportunities, and the challenges that food systems have on conservation. So today in this KenLab 2024 conference, as WWF, we still want to play the role of conveners, informing about what is happening on our landscapes. So we have just had a session on food system impacts on our landscapes. And in this, we were talking about two key reports that WWF has produced. We have the Living Planet report that actually shows that biodiversity is heavily threatened in our landscapes. We are having 76% losses in biodiversity since 1970, according to this report. And food systems and agricultural production is actually blamed for that reduction. This is because what we are doing in the landscapes, we are converting these habitats. We are actually converting rangelands into cropland areas. We have so much appetite for farming maize and horticultural crops. So we are not caring that it's a rangeland. We are taking up the farm. We are getting into the forest, but we are also using chemicals that are not good for wildlife in these ecosystems. So this is a big worry because it is leading to a lot of losses in biodiversity. Another critical report that we were discussing today is what we call Africa Ecological Food Futures. It actually brings all this evidence down to what is happening in our African landscapes. And what is critical, like when you look at the southern Kenya landscape, that actually goes all the way from Tsavo up to the Mara area through Narok and Kajiado, it is showing that croplands are really taking over these areas that were meant for rangelands and livestock production. So in this, we were actually asking stakeholders, what do we need to do so that we avoid these trends whereby agriculture is overusing land, agriculture is overusing water, agriculture is putting the wrong chemicals in the landscapes. So with our stakeholder today, we've had very good engagements looking at issues of land use planning. How do we plan our lands to ensure that conservation areas remain intact and also production areas are protected? Another thing that really came out very strong in this discussion is on the issue of integrated planning. What has been happening when we plan, agriculturalists are planning, conservationists are planning alone. So we want all this to come together because a landscape is having multiple functions. People are farming, there is tourism, there is livestock. So what we want is a situation where they all come together, agree on how they're going to use this landscape. Another critical thing that came out is actually on food loss and waste. We are losing a lot of food through waste, but this food is actually the one making people to get tempted to expand agricultural production more. So when you lose 30% of your production, that means you will need an extra 30% that you will lose. So you are taking up more land, more labor, you're converting more land that could have been used for biodiversity. So what we are looking at, how do we reduce that food loss and waste? And talking to key stakeholders like IFA, they're coming up with an agroecology strategy that is actually trying to speak to this, showing, can we set up like food banks, whereby food that should be lost can be brought into these banks and redistributed to hungry people? Because you cannot be a country where people are hungry and others are wasting food. That is quite imbalanced. Another aspect that we actually talked to during this meeting is on the need to farm in a sustainable way. So sustainable practices are very critical, and stakeholders have been speaking on the need to use organic fertilizers in these areas, to use bio inputs. Kenya, we just had the Soil Health Summit that happened, and for the first time we saw policymakers starting to say, apart from inorganic fertilizers, we also need to bring in organic fertilizers. We are on a good trajectory, but we could be very late. We just need to change the systems very fast so that we take these landscapes back to where they are. As much as we will not get to where we were, but we need to salvage something so that we continue protecting biodiversity. I think for me, quite good progress is happening in East Africa. Kenya is going to launch its agroecology strategy, which speaks to food system transformation. Tanzania has already launched its ecological agriculture strategy. Uganda is actually soon launching their strategy. That tells you that stakeholders have woken up to understand the impact of food systems on the ecological future of our countries. And so they are putting up these strategies to protect that. So I think we are doing good on strategies, but we are always doing good on strategies. We really need to ensure that we are acting. Our problem is, how do we implement these policies to the letter? We need resources, we need technical capacities, and we need people to adopt these practices. I think food banks have been effective. In Ethiopia, they have practiced food banks and redistributed food, but actually food banks originated from like the West, like in Canada, where they have been used to redistribute food to other people. So what we keep on saying is that let's keep on trying. Some of these might look really new, but we need to fix the system. Rather than lose food as the other one is hungry, why can't we copy some of these models, but deal with cultural issues, deal with issues of food safety? Because you know our culture, hiyo ni mabaki ya chakula saa zingine, si ndio? But really when you are hungry, unajali mabaki kweli? Yes. So if there is a challenge, we can use this to fix it. But still what we are emphasizing is don't waste food, even when you're in a hotel. Don't take what you don't need. So just be conscious every time that you're wasting food. But you also take us back to the question of post-harvest losses. We are also having technologies like in maize that can reduce the post-harvest losses that we get out of insects and out of rotting. So we have technologies and that are taking care of the post-harvest system, but we are also having innovations around actual food waste, which is post-plate. After someone has served food, we also have interventions around the post-plate. Populations are increasing, and when populations increase, there is need for food. When urbanization happens, there is need for housing that is actually happening around these conservation areas. But I think we need just to zone out areas. If the place is like a wildlife corridor that is supposed to help wildlife to move, it is a place where wildlife goes drinking water, let's leave out those areas. So there is strength in having evidence on understanding which are the user areas for different, for wildlife, so that we don't get into these areas. I think that's the only way we can do it. The populations will keep on expanding, but we don't want human beings to exist at the expense of nature. We all need to coexist. There is more into food system transformation beyond the food banks. We are talking about indigenous food coming back, and we have seen organizations like Rockefeller starting to say, can we allow students, school children, to feed on these indigenous foods? So there are different innovations just beyond what a panelist mentioned about the food bank. I think we're also looking at how can we go back to indigenous food by bringing back the seed systems. There is a panelist who talked about that, because there is no food without seed. So we are looking at strengthening the whole value chain from pre-production up to the waste system. Yeah. So the transformation has to go across the value chain. You can't fix one place and leave out the other one. You cannot do that.